Welcome back to another episode of looking at vintage and also modern CGC graded comic books that have sold recently on eBay. Very wide assortment here for you guys. I've got some old Silver Age books all the way through some modern books. And for a few of these, I did pull up the Go Collect data just to show you how that sale compares to what the historical prices look like for that particular book in that particular grade. Just a pretty decent assortment here. Not everything are in this video are books that I would personally want, but they caught my eye to at least want to talk about. So I hope that you enjoyed this episode. I try to do this every Sunday, and just thanks so much for watching, as always. So first, we're going to start off with some early books, and it's not often you see a Journey into Mystery number 83, the first appearance of Thor in comic books, show up on eBay. And this was a 1962 book that it's very tough to get this in this particular grade with white pages. I mean, how often do you see a CGC 1.0 for Journey into Mystery with white pages? That's very, very odd. And I thought that for a 1.0, this one actually really presented nicely. Obviously, if it's a 1.0, it's got some major issues with it. But, you know, just looking at it, at the zoomed photos of it, this is a really clean copy for what this book is. I mean, this is a classic book. And usually when you get into that 1.0, it's got cream or cream to off-white or even worse, like brittle pages. But this one had white pages, which is crazy. It also had the custom Spider-Man over NYC label, which I don't know if I personally would have done it that way, but it looks pretty cool. I mean, it looks like a pretty cool book. So that one sold for $3,400 from Quality Comics. That's a trusted seller on eBay. I think I bought from them a couple of times over the years. And here was another big one, given the grade especially. This was a 7.0 for Fantastic Four #1 from 1961. This is the origin and first appearance of the Fantastic Four. But it's a 7.0, off-white to white pages. That's a pretty high grade considering the age of the book. And obviously it was going to be expensive, as we all knew. I still have not seen the new Fantastic Four movie. I'm probably going to stream it whenever it hits streaming. But this one is another classic book. And in this grade, you're talking a big boy book. So this one was listed for $57,500. And the best offer accepted on it was $47,000. So $47,000. And I wanted, on this one, I was like, well, how does that compare? Because this is, you know, a price point that I don't follow very closely. So I did pull up the Go Collect data in a 7.0. Now, in a 7.0, that's in the top 6.3% of all graded copies. That's a huge book. And the grade obviously makes it, you know, a very desirable one. And you can see what the price has done. This price chart, I think I've got 3 different ones that I pulled up in this video for the Go Collect data, and the price charts are all different on them, and we'll obviously explain why. This is probably the most typical price chart that you're going to see for any book right now, where, you know, it had a steady kind of price. It started to have a big run up. Then it had a huge spike during the COVID bubble, and now it's crashing back down to earth a little bit and getting more in line with the overall trend line. And you can make an argument that this book is below the trend line, really. If you're looking at this trend line of the kind of the steady increase, obviously it had some dips here and there, but then it started having, you know, the normal, what you would call investment grade book steady increase. Well, you know, based on these trend lines, you could make an argument that we're either back to the trend line or we're even slightly below that. And so this book, in a 7.0, the one that I just pulled up has not shown up yet in the data because it just literally just sold a couple of days ago. But looking at the rest of the sales, you know, given that it is a 7.0 and it's in the top 6%, there's not a ton of data points, but there was one from June of 2025 on Heritage. Now, this one was cream to off-white pages, and that one sold for $42,000. Now, if I'm looking at that one, and that one was a beautiful copy, certainly, that sold on Heritage, and this one, again, was off-white to white. And so what I'd probably do if I was trying to figure out a bid price or an offer price, I'd probably go back to the last off-white to white pager that sold. And in this case, this was in June of 2022, which was basically the peak market conditions for collectibles. My video kind of hammering saying this is the peak. Here's where we are. I think that, inflation is at its peak. Collectibles prices are at its peak. This rocket firing star, Boba Fett sold for a massive price, like over $1 million in that month of June of 2022. And that's when I came out with a video and said, this is the peak. I'm calling it right now. And I ended up being pretty right, in my opinion. So in my opinion, this is the peak price. And this is what whoever bought this book used. They used this data point of 81,000. And they're probably tried to back off and say, okay, what's a fair price today for a 7.0 off-white to white pages? And this book is actually the same one, I believe, if you're looking at it. No, it's not the same one. It's not the same one. It had a pretty close serial number there. The last 4 digits looked close, but it is a different book. So anyway, that one was at 81,000, and he or she offered, 47,000 for it. So that is a pretty crazy drop from 81,000 to 47,000. But that's also about the price. If you're looking at these price discounts, 88 all the way down to 42. So pretty wild. But that's kind of the probably the mindset this person was using is, okay, here was the last off-white to white pager that sold at 81,000. But here's the last true comp, even though it had worse page quality. And that was only a couple months ago. Maybe let's give them an extra 5, given that it's off-white to white versus cream to off-white. That's my guess. All right. But anyway, just an interesting sale there. But as you'll see, the price charts for the other two where I pulled up the Go Collect data were totally different. Here's another interesting one. This was a Tales of Suspense number 40, which is actually the second appearance of Iron Man overall and the first gold suit version of Iron Man. Remember, the first appearance of Iron Man, he's wearing kind of a gray or steel suit. But this is when they've kind of very quickly, obviously, transitioned over to the gold suit. And this one was only a 3.0 off-white to white pager, listed for $450, sold for $400. But given that it's the second overall appearance, that's not a terrible deal to me as well. Again, from 1963, another Golden Age book. And then we start getting into just stuff that I thought was interesting. And this is always one that's always interested me. This is the Amazing Spider-Man number 1 from 2022. Again, peak market conditions, remember, June 2022. And this is the Hustle edition that features Eminem on the cover. I don't know why I've always liked this book, but I remember when it first came out, and it just had the perfect timing for it to come out because, again, the market was crazy. It's got Eminem. It's a low print run, Hustle edition book. This was from Salvador Larroca. It is a cool book. There's also a sketch version of this, but the regular version, in my opinion, is the better looking version. And it's like a wrap off, I guess, between Spider-Man and Eminem. But anyway, this one sold at $650. Another one sold in an auction. This is a better quality photo, so you can at least look at it there. It's a pretty cool looking book, I will admit. And that one sold in an auction for $879. So $650 best, that sold, in a buy it now versus in an auction $879. And these sold within a day of each other. And that's a pretty huge price difference. You're basically talking about a 30% price difference between the same book that sold. One of them did have the custom label, admittedly, but who cares when it comes to a modern book, right? And so I wanted to pull up the price chart on this. And again, we talked about this. It came out during the peak market conditions, so it had great timing for it to come out. When it first came out, this book was going for present dollar value about $1,900, which is pretty crazy to think about. And then it's just completely cratered after that. Obviously by February of 2023, the comic book market had corrected. There was a big drop. So it went from June, or well, they're saying December of 2022, $1,900 to February of 2023. So we're talking only 2.5 to 3 months later, it had about a 60% drop in price. And from there, it's basically been flat, right? It's been, it's had some overpays here and there, but in general, it's basically been flat in terms of price. And so present dollar value is about $650 or so. So that's what's even more interesting, is the fact that this one just sold in an auction for $879. But if you want it, you want it. And that one did sell for $879. But try not to spend that much. There's plenty of data points anywhere from $550 to about $650 here recently. But a cool book if you're into that kind of thing. I mean, most people aren't, but I will admit that I like it. I think it's a pretty cool looking book. Batman number 227. I did pull up the Go Collect data on this one. Again, this is one of my favorites, as you guys know. This was a white pager, 8.5, CGC 8.5 white pager. It was listed for $3,150. The best offer accepted on that was $2,900. Now, we looked at this price chart where we've had the correction. We had this price chart where, again, it just happened to come out at the most perfect time in December of 2022 during the height of collectibles prices, and then cratered and flatlined after that. Well, now let's look at the Batman 227's price chart. This is the kind of price chart you want to see, right? This is what a investment grade collectible should do. Over time, there's going to be squiggles, of course, but over time, it's on a steady upward chart. And, everything from January of 2008, this book was going for $275 to today, this book goes for $2,900. So pretty interesting how 3 different price charts, but this is a book that's obviously very desirable among collectors today. And, when you have a CGC 8.5 white pager, that's in the top 18% of books. And, for my CGC 9.4, I think I have a 9.4 for this book. It might be a 9.2. I think I paid about $3,300 thereabout, somewhere in that book. Let's take a look at them. You can pull up the chart for any of these if you're a member there. I think mine was not it was not a 9.0. It was either a 9.2. I'm guessing it's a 9.2. Yeah, the 9.2. It was the book that I think I bought. Let's see there. Well, it might have been a 9.4. I don't know. I can't remember what. Now, here it is. This is it. This is my book right here. So, buyer paid in current dollar value, $37.12. And so mine was an off-white to white pager there. So, very clean copy, though. We'd love to have about an 8.5 or a 9.0 in a white pager, but that'll have to wait. But they've got the present dollar value at $3,600. So it's one of those books that, it ended up being a good buy, but I think I paid $3,200 at the time, but now it's like, $3,600 is what the fair market value is according to Go Collect. But that's a big book, and it's in the top 6.2% of all copies. And one of my friends, Andrew, he just bought himself a 9.4, I believe, and I think his was a white pager as well. So congrats to Andrew on that one. I know he was looking for one. He was asking me to sell me. He's asking me to sell him my copy of this book, but I was like, I don't think so. This is one of the few books where I really like it, and I don't want to sell it. But that one is a beautiful book. And again, this one that was an 8.5 white pager sold for $2,900 and a best offer accepted. That was a beauty. Next up, here's another one in my collection that is a sneaky one. This is Detective Comics number 471 from 1977. And this one is the first modern appearance of Hugo Strange. And if you don't know who he is, he's basically the psycho doctor that ran Arkham Asylum and ran weird experiments on the patients and the criminals that were there. And this is his modern appearance where he basically came back from the dead from, I guess, his Silver Age appearance. He had a Silver Age appearance, and I think in that story he died. And so in this Detective Comics number 471, he removes his mask and he's still alive. Yes, Batman, the dead yet live. And so I don't know. I love this book. I think it's a great book. And I like all the villains from the Batman universe. Hugo Strange was definitely one of my favorites. And this one's held up pretty well. This was an off-white to white pager, and it was a 9.8, and it sold for $450. And I think I have a white page 9.8. I think I paid $375 for mine, somewhere in that ballpark. But that's another kind of sneaky book that's tough to find in a 9.8. There's not many of these in a 9.8 on the census. Some more common books maybe that you guys kind of know at this point, but this is The Dark Knight Returns #1. This one sold from my comic shop for $8.55, but I have seen this sell recently as low as $7.50. And maybe this had the benefit of really nice photos, but as you can see, it had a lot of scuffing on the book. This is a book that's it's almost impossible to get this in a perfect kind of slab, because this book shows every single defect. It may not even be on the book. It's usually not on the book. It's on the inner well liner for the book. You think that CGC at this point would come up with a better inner well liner that doesn't show every single scuff like this, but it is what it is. But that's a classic book, obviously. $8.55, but try to stick closer to $7.50 right now. That's a pretty easy one to find in a 9.8. And here was another interesting sale in an auction. This is Batman number 423 in a 9.8. Obviously a Todd McFarlane classic cover. And this one is on the downswing. This one had been hovering between 1,800 and 1,700. This one in an auction sold for $15.81. And, you know, that's kind of the going rate right now. But it's a great book. And $15.81 in an auction for that one. Incredible Hulk number 340. Another classic Todd McFarlane cover. This one sold in an auction for $9.65. It's been hovering around $9.50 lately. We have seen a few sales here and there above $1,000, but if you can, try to aim for that $900 to $950 range. New Mutants 98. Okay, this is an interesting one. I've got a standard direct edition 98 that is very easy to find. This one sold for $1,008 and in a buy it now, which is about the going rate. But look at what a 9.8 with Stan Lee's signature sold for. This was also an old case style, but signed by Stan Lee. It was listed for $3,700. The best offer accepted was $2,100. But again, it's a direct edition 9.8. But given Stan Lee's signature on it, you're basically paying over 2 times just to get his signature on this book in a 9.8. Pretty wild. But anyway, that's just shows you the power of Stan Lee's signature in high grade, really in any grade, but especially on a common book that's easy to find in a 9.8. But it's a big book, obviously, the first appearance of Deadpool, but pretty crazy to see that price premium that people are willing to pay. Another sneaky one that I always liked, this is the television variant cover for Punisher number 218. This is when Frank Castle puts on the War Machine armor. It's a great cover that shows John Bernthal there. And if you hadn't heard, not only have they renewed the new Daredevil Born Again series for a season 2, Disney has apparently already renewed for a season 3. So there's going to be at least 2 more seasons of Daredevil Born Again. I personally love the series. I just hope that we get into some real Punisher and Daredevil in action, because the first episode the first season really was focused on Daredevil, Matt Murdock's attempt to lead a normal life. And obviously with Kingpin becoming mayor of New York, it really changed things, and it was pretty cool to see the transformation and all that good stuff. But this is a really good book. I have to tell you, man, John Bernthal as the Punisher is awesome. I mean, he is awesome as the Punisher. He is just basically perfect. He's exactly what you would expect from the Punisher if you ever read some of the 80s and 90s Punisher comics. He just captures the Punisher perfectly. So this is a great book. It's a pretty low CGC 9.8 ratio book. It's obviously a lower print, kind of special variant cover, but it's also a very dark cover and hard to get in a 9.8. Harder, not hard, but harder to get in a 9.8. So that one sold for $440. That's a great book. We had a newsstand edition of Spawn #1, $576. That just shows you how much that book has come down. This, for the longest time, was always kind of $800 to $900, but even in an auction, a newsstand edition of Spawn #1 sold for $576. That's kind of a new recent low, really. And then we've got some Star Wars books that I wanted to show you, including a few autos. We've got Star Wars #1 in a 9.8. That sold for $23 $25. That's kind of a new recent low. It had been hovering in that $24 to $2,500 range. This one was pretty nicely centered. It did have a little bleed through on the cover, not much, but $23.25 was a good deal, I think, for that book. Now's a good time to get it. We had a newsstand edition of Star Wars number 42, the first appearance of Boba Fett. That one sold for $9.49 in an auction. Pretty good deal there. We had a 9/8 direct edition of Star Wars number 68, the first appearance of the Mandalorians in comics. $8.80 on that one. And so those are the big three, really, from the vintage run: Star Wars number 1, 42, and 68. And then we got some autographs. This was an odd one. This one was signed by Jeremy Bulloch, but he also drew a wanted poster on the cover. For $200, find him, wanted, Han Solo, and then signed by Jeremy Bulloch, who's Boba Fett. It was listed for $2,000, and it says it sold at $2,000. I was like, there's no way. And so I did look it up, and Star Wars Tales number 19 did sell for $600, which is maybe a little more, closer to reality, but that still seems like a lot. But just kind of a funny sign and sketch type of thing there that he did with Jeremy Bulloch signing it. I just thought it was worth showing. And then this one was signed by Harrison Ford. This is Star Wars number 4, signed by Harrison Ford. It was listed at about $1,900. The best offer accepted on that was $1,620. So Harrison Ford and Carrie Fisher are probably neck and neck for one and two for a signature series 9/8. And then obviously Mark Hamill would be number 3 on that. But that is a big number, but Harrison Ford does not sign much stuff. So that's why it is what it is. This was, I thought, a really good deal in an auction. This was signed by Matt Lanter and Ashley Eckstein, 2 of the voices for Anakin and Ahsoka from the Clone Wars cartoon, in a 9/8. This is the Sprouse variant cover for War of the Bounty Hunters number 5 in a 9/8. $182.50. Pretty good deal there, I think, for both of their signatures. Great looking cover as well. And then finally, one more signature series. This was Predator number 2, the movie adaptation. I had never seen this book before, but this is a pretty cool cover, and it's signed by Bill Paxton and Danny Glover, 2 of the main stars from the movie. Pretty cool book there, and that one sold for $600, but I had never seen this book before. Just a really cool looking cover for the adaptation of the film Predator number 2, signed by 2 of the main actors. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this look at recent sales for CGC graded comic books. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll be back soon.